Hi, Mr. Schaffer. What's
Hello,
up?
sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you very well.
Okay, great. This is the best I can do in terms of sound and stuff because my producer left and I no longer have technical support.
Oh no, that's fine. I can hear you perfectly well. Is it cool if I call you Mr. Schaffer or Elijah or
You
what
can call
would
me
you?
Elijah or Mr. Schaefer. They were that Elijah's fine.
Okay. So the purpose of this interview, I just wanted to it's going to be like a video and an article in meet on my Medium page and the DMV Daily because I just wanted
Beautiful.
to I just wanted you to speak your truth on why you became and I might use this for like a documentary that I'm working on about like Democrats and Republicans and the 2016 and 2020 election, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, and to clarify, which doesn't really matter, but what's your political leaning personally and what's the political leaning of the publication?
I mean, the political leaning it is liberal because it's like a more like it's like a black publication, but I am more like independent, so I'm not gonna like cut you off and say, "Oh, whoa, 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 whoa," that you shouldn't say that. Like, I'm not gonna make you, I'm not gonna censor you in any
Okay,
way.
that's totally fine. And then you said it's a documentary as well. What's the documentary for specifically?
It's like for my own little, I guess something I might be developing within a few years about like how divided America is right now.
Okay, I'll do my best to give you good sound bites.
Yeah. So, how did you start off in the conservative media?
It's interesting because I'm not personally a conservative myself. I've always been somebody who thought independently. I grew up in Los Angeles and I've been around the film industry. And I've always basically had a mind of my own to see what the truth was. And I noticed most of the people did not see that around me. The most important part about this is uh, eventually in all of the madness that was going on in the world, I noticed that there were a few people that were actually speaking the truth about basic biology while I was working on a college degree in molecular biology specifically and genetic engineering. And one of those people is a commentator named Ben Shapiro, who said the famous words that there were two genders. And that was during the time when there was debate over whether there were more. I couldn't believe that we were having public discussion. And I decided that I would just start a podcast. Everyone laughed at me and thought it was stupid. I obviously was going, towards grad school, working on my teaching credential and moving on to the next steps of my life. And by the third episode of my show, somebody called in a fake gun crime threat to a local high school and claimed that my show was planning on shooting up a local high school, where police responded and came to my work, spoke to my supervisor, and I realized that the show had potential, that it could go places because we did not call him a threat. We were not, never would ever do anything like that. I'm not a person who would ever even be prone to violence. I didn't even own a gun at the time. And so it was shocking to me that people saw the threat of the show so much that they would try to take it down in its infantile stage. I survived that. I got kicked out of my studio because of the police interaction, and I decided to pursue my podcast and my show. And yeah, it developed from there.
Okay, so back in 2016, when I guess when most people were surprised that Trump won the election, what did you think of his 4 years in office?
Well, I wasn't surprised that he won the election. I wasn't even surprised that he became the Republican nominee. I was a pretty staunch Trump supporter early on. I was not registered a Republican. I was actually been always registered independent, and I did not have a big heart for the Republican Party, but I have always been a populist in deep down inside. I considered myself centrist, but Trump's rhetoric, his speech, his lack of polish, I was really happy that somebody finally just spoke their mind and were not corrupt like most people. And we're going to attempt to do things I thought were important, like fix immigration. And over those 4 years, I would say I'm a mix of happy with the fact that Trump was in office. I don't think that I could say I'm disappointed with his job, But overall, I feel like his ego got in the way, and his advisors, Jared Kushner, and some of the people around him, like his daughter, liberalized his campaign when he moved away from Bannon's influence and ended up becoming more of a centrist, center-right leader, which was at a Bannon the base that elected him. And he really did not push hard enough against tech censorship. He did not fight as hard as he could have with immigration. He spoke a lot about himself and his own ego. And I believe that he thought he was going to win another uh, term, and maybe thought he would push things back until then. And obviously that didn't work. So I think I'd mixed feelings at the end, especially with the way that, he sort of handled his last few months with the election itself. Became more about complaining, and he followed bad advice from, pretty insane people, lawyers and individuals who were out there. And I thought that, Trump was just in chaos and free fall. And I don't think he's ever really going to be able to return in any major way anytime soon.
So you think that even if he does run for like 2024 election, he might lose?
I don't believe the integrity of our elections can be trusted at this point. I think looking at what's happening in New York with having mistaken over 100,000 ballots, I don't believe even if you would like to make the argument that voting machines are safe and things are thorough, that there's no hacking or whatever. I'm not going to make an argument for anything in particular, but I don't believe, at least on the right, that we trust in the institution of current elections. Reading what came out about the way that these individuals fortified the election, rechanged the rules, the way that tech companies came in and censored information. I mean, you didn't have to hack a machine to change the election. I'm not claiming anyone did that, but preventing information from getting into the hands of voters is enough, and could be enough, just to swing people in the right direction. So the censorship and propaganda and the coordination with tech oligarchs, I'm not confident Republicans can really sway a presidential election in the future. And the way Democrats have moved away from serving the people to becoming a party rule system, for instance, like with We the People Act, which, from what the best sources I can find at any given point in that act, to grab power for the elections, there was no more than 40% of Americans that agreed with any single point, and the average was about 11 to 22%. So they're not representing the people. They're not trying to represent the people anymore. They've gone rogue. And I don't believe in the integrity of American institutions like the elections any longer, and don't think that there will be another fair and free election unless major reform happens or something worse.
So what do you think of Joe Biden's time as president for like about 6 months, 5, 6 months right now?
I mean, he's not president. I mean, he might have been voted in, it might have been certified, but he's not running the show. And it's clear on that Joe Biden is not all there. Not only does he get his dates wrong, just as recently as saying, it's July 4th when it was July 2nd. The way that he slurs, he loses his posture, the way he snaps back at reporters, reads cues like I'm not supposed to answer questions, or I'm going to do what they say. Clearly, his handlers, even with MSNBC and CNN being concerned that no president has behaved like this, with the choice of Kamala Harris being chosen as his running mate. I went to many of her rallies, or a few of them, in her home state, by the way, in Los Angeles. She could barely fill half of a high school gymnasium. I mean, she pulled so low. Americans didn't want her. Nobody really wanted Biden. I've never even been able to speak to a Democrat who's been happy with something Joe Biden has done true to his campaign promises, maybe besides adding gender options to passports. With the rates of inflation, which could be related not just to him, but to some of these stimulus packages, with the way that he's bounced back, with the border crisis currently going on, with the slap in the face with the White House talking about how we're saving 16 cents on our meals, gas skyrocketing, even though the barrels are only about $75 a barrel, and it makes no sense in terms of inflation, our economy, jobs report. I mean, the things that are happening, could they have happened to another president? It's possible. But there's nothing that is of merit that I would say that he's accomplished that I'm happy about, besides agreeing to resume some of the building of the wall at the southern border, which he hasn't even made true to exactly on a large scale, which is obviously why Abbott and others are talking about building their own wall down at the southern border, because at this point, Biden is acting more like a regime and less like an actual president.
Okay. So last, I think it was last fall, like in September sometime, I think you know this company. Have you heard of the Daily Caller?
I'm very familiar with them. Yes.
Yeah, I worked with them for like an internship that I had as a video journalist last fall.
Awesome.
And I was at this rally trying to get content. It was a Breonna Taylor rally. And there were a few activists there saying that we need to defund the police. And like I interviewed one girl. She said she wanted the police defunded so that the money from that we give to the police would go to like underfunded schools, colleges, and other black communities. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, defunding the police is like trying to put out a fire simply by walking in the other direction. I mean, this is a non-issue. Police funding and the overfunding of police could be definitely argued at the federal level. I think if we're going to defund anything, let's defund the NSA, let's defund the FBI. I think that they're pretty become useless and rogue. But in the municipal level, in terms of law enforcement, there's no studies that show that defunding the police lowers crime. In fact, as we've moved in this direction, we've seen spikes in violent crime that we haven't seen since the 1990s, which we've seen, problematic levels then, back when Biden was actually based and was tough on crime, back when the Democratic Party used terms like super predators, which some people call racist. I just call those things to be unfortunately accurate of the era that they were in. They at least told the truth during that time, even if we disagreed on policy. This idea that the problems in Black culture and the reason why Black people are being arrested from over policing or because of systemic racism are just functionally untrue. If you look at the plight of the Black family and Black individual before the government got heavily involved in the war on poverty, I mean, they were doing much better in terms of morality and families staying together, in terms of just economic prosperity. The Black community has a myriad of issues that I could get into, including the fact that they spend their money quickly on material goods, don't invest back into their own communities. They tend to use race grifting to exit their communities rather than to build them back up. They look down on gentrification and things that can make their communities nicer and raise the tax bracket. And unfortunately, when you look at they even say that it's racist to say that 13% of Americans commit up to half of the crimes that are violent crimes. And it's true, it is a racist statement, because Black people are not committing most of the violent crimes in this country proportionately, because the crimes are not being committed by the Black women, violent crimes proportionately, or older Black men or young Black men. In fact, the majority of these crimes are being committed by about 15 to 45-year-old Black men, which from my understanding is anywhere from 3.5 to 6.5% of the US population. That's a huge problem. The idea is that people don't want to invest in these communities because of the crime and the problems, and blaming the police is just a way to continually destabilize these communities. And it's functionally, that's why I said it's stupid, because the Black communities themselves, on a large scale, majority speaking, want more police funding, and they want their communities safer and looked out for, and police are demoralized or don't want to work in these areas. So this whole movement was just propped up by the media. Breonna Taylor wasn't some innocent girl either. So I don't want to disparage anyone who died, but by no means is ultimately she some model citizen. Her, George Floyd, these people that were used to spark this movement, I mean, they've taken potentially people that were already going down not the best path in terms of their association and what they were doing. Um, and so, defunding the police, foolishness. There's no way that was ever going to work. The American public was never going to go for it. And as cities go rogue and do it, well, they're the ones paying the consequence, and it's their citizens that unfortunately pay the price.
Um, so one last question: what do you think, like personally, that Americans can do to like come together and like try to get over this? Uh, I mean, I don't want to say maybe systemic racism, but like try to like come together as a whole.
It won't happen. America is not going to heal. That's impossible. There is basically a certain standard that you need in a country and merit to look at, and we could talk about those. that would show you where a country will lead either to revolution, civil war, or a peaceful divorce. And if you're like me, I would love the third option to happen eventually if it has to, which is for any type of division to become peaceful. Uh, States are looking at I'm listening to Arizona, listening to South Dakota, I'm listening to Florida, Texas. The governors are referring to the government as going rogue, as abandoning them like colonies. This is not just structurally at a social level, this is systemically at a high level, that the country has become polarized to a point where the government does not represent them. Our tax dollars do not work for us. Our corporations sell us out. We are given non-issues. Systemic racism, white supremacy, and climate change are not the fundamental issues facing our country. The reason why they are touted as so is intentionally because they cannot be solved, because there are no metrics to measure whether they have been solved, which gives the government unlimited power and abilities to raise money through revenue like taxes on the citizens in the attempt to achieve and accomplish some end result that will never be arrived at. And so it's a perfect gaslighting of the American population. And that's why at the end of this racial justice movement, the races have not been united. Nothing has gotten better, because that's not the problem. Your average black and white person don't hate each other. Your average white person doesn't care about race at all. They've invented and reinvented the problem of racism. It's cultural Marxism that is trying to destroy our country, and a new form of totalitarianism, police state, and tyranny, where our economy works more for a world idea, where they use and take advantage of crises rather than using those crises to heal a nation. The divisions in this country, unfortunately, the country won't bounce back. We've had a revolution once, we had a civil war as well. And sadly enough, while we bomb and kill and murder hundreds of thousands of people on foreign soil to achieve our imperialistic tactics, that bloodshed probably isn't too far away from our country. That's sad to say, because I don't want that to happen. And I would deeply hope that nobody would ever do anything violent towards each other. When you look at Xi Jinping being praised by CNN, talking about there may be bloodshed with Taiwan, Biden not standing up to them, the way that we've been colonized institutionally by China and our enemies, Putin saying he does not even see us as a threat. We lost communication with North Korea. Canada won't celebrate Canada Day. Churches are being burned. Western identity and culture is being eliminated. We've been sold a lie. Our country has collapsed after the 1965 immigration laws, where we have been sold diversity as a lie. They've raped the benevolence of the American people by telling them that as we lost the biospirit of our country, our culture, national identity, ethnicity, whatever you'd like to call it, that we would bring in people and that we would become one with the weak. But they took advantage of the immigration. They've pitted these people against our country. They've turned them into slaves of the Democrat Party. And we now live in two countries, where one party flies their Globo Homo flag, which is the globalist American empire, which is considered a hate crime to deface, while if you fly the American flag, you're actually shamed into taking it down. So we are currently living in a soft revolution. There are two countries that already exist on the same land, and we are watching the current party in power of the institutions demonize all of those people who still hold to the former nation. Their intelligence communities are being weaponized against us. Tech companies are cracking down on our speech. We have a difficult time getting our messages across. Our elections have been compromised. Foreign intelligence, foreign aid cannot be trusted. And we are making the threat of this country its own citizens by saying white supremacy is the problem. Therefore, I believe the war has already begun. I believe the threat is already here. And I believe that I'm currently on the losing side.
Well, hopefully it's a little more optimistic than that. But Elijah Schaffer, thank you for taking the time out to talk with me. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.